When did we utter the very first word? It's one of the biggest questions we can ask about ourselves. It's right up there with learning to walk on two legs or control fire. The moment a sound stopped being just a grunt or a shriek and became a word. A symbol, a tiny piece of shared reality. The frustrating answer is, we don't know. We will probably never know the exact moment or the exact word. Words are air. They vanish the second they are spoken. They don't leave fossils. You can't dig up a 200,000-year-old hello. But that's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a great detective story. Scientists from all different fields, archaeologists, biologists, geneticists, linguists, are digging for clues. They are piecing together a puzzle from ancient bones, stone tools, and our own DNA. And what they found is a long, slow, and incredible journey. It wasn't a single event. It was a gradual dawn, stretching over 1,000,000 years or more. To find the first word, we first need to agree on what a word is. It's not just communication. Animals communicate all the time. A vervet monkey has different alarm calls for leopard, eagle, and snake. That sounds a lot like words, but there's a crucial difference. The monkey's call is a reflex. It hears a certain rustle, sees a certain shadow, and a specific sound comes out automatically. It's a direct link to the thing it's seeing right now. Human language is different. It's symbolic. The word river doesn't sound like a river. It's just a collection of sounds we've all agreed means that body of flowing water. We can use it to talk about the river we're standing next to, or we can talk about a river we saw last week, or a river we want to find tomorrow, or a mythical river in a story. This ability to disconnect sound from the here and now is the magic of language. It's what lets us plan, remember, and imagine. So the question isn't just, when did we first make a meaningful sound? It's, when did we develop the ability for symbolic thought and the physical tools to express it? To answer that, we need to look at the hardware and the software that had to evolve. Let's start with the hardware, the body. 3 parts of our anatomy had to change dramatically to make speech possible: the brain, the vocal tract, and the ears. The brain is the command center. Speaking and understanding language is one of the most complex things a brain can do. We even have specific areas dedicated to it. You've probably heard of Broca's area and Wernicke's area. Broca's area in the front of the brain handles grammar and the physical act of speaking. Wernicke's area, more towards the back, deals with meaning and comprehension. If one of these gets damaged, a person can lose their ability to form sentences or understand them. We can't look at an ancient ancestor's brain, but we can look at the inside of their skulls. The brain leaves faint impressions on the bone as it grows. These are called endocasts. By looking at endocasts from our ancestors, paleontologists can see the general shape and size of their brains. And they can see when these key language areas started to bulge and take shape. Go back 2 to 3 million years to our early ancestors like Australopithecus, the family of the famous fossil Lucy. Her brain was small, not much bigger than a chimpanzee's. There's not much evidence of a developed Broca's area. She likely communicated with gestures and calls, like apes do today. But language as we know it? Probably not. Then comes Homo habilis, the handy man, around 2.4 million years ago. Their brains were bigger, and crucially, endocasts of their skulls show a definite bulge in the spot where Broca's area is in our brains. This is a huge clue. Homo habilis was also the first of our line to consistently make and use stone tools. Making a tool requires planning. You have to find the right rock, know how to hit it with another rock at just the right angle to flake off a sharp edge. This kind of sequential, planned action is very similar to the thinking required to string words together into a sentence. Some scientists think this is where the very first basic proto-language might have begun. Not full sentences, but maybe simple nouns. Rock, water, danger. Next up is Homo erectus, who appeared around 2 million years ago. These guys were a game changer. Their brains were much larger, getting close to the low end of modern human brain size. They created more sophisticated tools like the iconic Acheulean hand axe. These weren't just simple flakes. They were symmetrical, teardrop-shaped tools that required a lot more skill and foresight to make. You had to have a mental template of the final product in your head before you even started. That's a big cognitive leap. Homo erectus was also the first hominin to leave Africa and spread across Asia and Europe. Could they have coordinated that kind of migration, survived in new environments, and passed down tool-making skills for over 1 million years without some form of language? It seems very unlikely. Many researchers believe Homo erectus had a more advanced proto-language. Maybe not with complex grammar, but with a growing vocabulary. Enough to teach, to plan a hunt, to say, let's go over that hill tomorrow. The second piece of hardware is the vocal tract. This is your throat, your mouth, your tongue, your lips. A chimp can't talk, not because it isn't smart enough to learn some words, but because it physically can't make the sound. A chimp's larynx, its voice box, sits high up in its throat. This is great for swallowing and breathing at the same time, which is why a baby can drink from a bottle without choking. But it severely limits the range of sounds it can make. In humans, something remarkable happened. Our larynx dropped lower in the throat. This created a big open space above the vocal cords called the pharynx. This space acts like a resonance chamber. By changing the shape of the pharynx with our tongue, we can create the huge variety of vowel and consonant sounds that make up human speech. Think of the difference between e, ah, and oo. That's all thanks to our descended larynx and our incredibly flexible tongue. There was a big trade-off for this ability. A low larynx means the path for air and the path for food cross over in our throat. It makes us uniquely susceptible to choking on our food. For this dangerous trait to have been selected by evolution, the benefit must have been enormous, and the most likely benefit was speech. So, when did this happen? It's hard to tell from fossils. The larynx is all cartilage, so it doesn't preserve, but there is one tiny wishbone-shaped bone that can give us a clue: the hyoid bone. It sits in the neck and anchors the tongue and larynx muscles. It's the only bone in the body not connected to any other bone. Because it's so delicate, it's rarely found in fossils, but when we do find one, it's a treasure. For a long time, the argument was that only modern humans had the right anatomy. But then, in 1989, a nearly complete Neanderthal hyoid bone was found in a cave in Israel. And it looked almost identical to a modern human's. This was a bombshell. It suggested Neanderthals, our famous cousins who lived in Europe and Asia, had the vocal equipment to speak. More recent studies of their skulls and neck vertebrae support this. Their vocal tract was probably a bit different from ours, maybe producing a slightly different range of sounds, but they could almost certainly talk. The third piece of hardware is the ear. It's no good making a bunch of complex sounds if no one can hear the subtle differences between them. Human hearing is fine-tuned to a specific frequency range, right around 2 to 4 kilohertz. This is exactly the range where the key acoustic information in human speech is carried. By studying the tiny bones of the middle ear in fossil hominins, scientists can reconstruct how well they could hear. Studies on ancestors as old as Homo heidelbergensis, a common ancestor of us and Neanderthals themselves show that they had the same hearing sensitivity that we do. They were built to hear human speech. This is powerful evidence. Evolution wouldn't have shaped our ears to be exquisitely sensitive to these frequencies if there wasn't speech to be heard. This pushes the timeline for, at the very least, a sophisticated vocal communication system back to at least 500,000 years ago. So, we have the hardware: a brain capable of complex thought, a vocal tract capable of making the sounds, and ears capable of hearing them. But what about the software? What was the cognitive and social pressure that made language necessary? One of the biggest drivers was our increasingly complex social life. We weren't the strongest or fastest animals on the savannah. We survived by working together. Language is the ultimate tool for cooperation. It lets you coordinate a hunt. You go left, I'll go right, and we'll corner the antelope by the big rock. It lets you share knowledge. Don't eat those red berries, they make you sick, but the ones on the other bush are good. It also helps us navigate our complex social world. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar has a famous theory called the social gossip hypothesis. He argues that as our social groups got bigger, it became impossible to maintain bonds through physical grooming, which is what primates do. Language evolved as a form of vocal grooming. It let us service our relationships with multiple people at once, share information about who is trustworthy and who is not, and generally keep the social fabric of a large group from tearing apart. We needed language to keep track of our friends, our rivals, and our families. Another key piece of the mental software is something called theory of mind. This is the understanding that other people have minds, beliefs, and intentions that are different from your own. You need this to have a real conversation. When I speak to you, I'm assuming you will understand my intentions. I'm tailoring my words based on what I think you already know. Without theory of mind, communication is just a series of commands or statements. With it, you can persuade, deceive, comfort, and teach. It's hard to pinpoint when this emerged, but acts that suggest symbolic thinking, like burying the dead with care, are strong indicators. Well, Neanderthals did this. It suggests they were thinking about a person's life, their place in the group, and maybe even what comes next. That's a deeply symbolic and abstract act. So, let's put it all together and walk through the timeline of our suspects. Australopithecus 4 to 2 million years ago, they had ape-sized brains and ape-like vocal tract. They communicated, of course, with gestures and calls, but symbolic words, almost certainly not. Homo habilis 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago, the first toolmaker, the first hint of a language-ready brain in the endocasts. This is our earliest, most tentative May. Perhaps the first single words started here, tied directly to objects. Stone. Meat. A simple, functional proto-language. Homo erectus 2 million to about 100,000 years ago, the world traveler. Bigger brain, better tools, and the need to coordinate in new and challenging environments. The pressure for better communication was immense. They probably had a much larger vocabulary and could string a few words together. Not Shakespeare, but a powerful tool for survival and teaching. This is a very strong candidate for when a true proto-language became essential. Homo heidelbergensis 700,000 to 200,000 years ago, the common ancestor of us and Neanderthals. Their ear anatomy shows they could hear speech. Their brain size was well within the modern human range. The hardware was largely in place. The foundations of language were likely solid by this point. The Neanderthals 400,000 to 40,000 years ago, our closest extinct relatives. They had huge brains, complex tools, they hunted big game, controlled fire, and buried their dead. Their hyoid bone was modern. Their ears were modern. The evidence is overwhelming that they had language. It might have sounded different from ours, perhaps with a different structure or syntax, but they were not the grunting cavemen of cartoons. They were a talking people. Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago to today, that's us. By the time our species emerged in Africa, all the pieces were in place. Our earliest ancestors were physically and mentally capable of the same kind of language we use today. The complexity of our art, our tools, and the speed at which we spread across the entire globe after leaving Africa about 70,000 years ago suggests that fully modern syntactic language was our killer app. It was our secret weapon. There's one more piece of evidence, a very modern one that helps us look into the deep past. It comes from our genes. In 2001, scientists identified a gene called FOXP2, and it's not a language gene in the sense that it single-handedly creates language, but it is crucial for it. People with a mutated version of the FOXP2 gene have severe problems with fine motor control of their mouths and faces, making it very difficult to articulate speech clearly. They also have trouble with grammar. The human version of the FOXP2 gene has two key mutations that differ from the chimpanzee version. These changes seem to be critical for our linguistic ability. For a while, scientists thought these mutations were very recent, appearing only in Homo sapiens. This fit a theory that language was a Big Bang event that happened suddenly and gave us a huge advantage. But then they managed to sequence DNA from Neanderthal bones, and they found that Neanderthals had the exact same version of the FOXP2 gene that we do. Now, this was another huge point in favor of Neanderthal speech. It also tells us these crucial mutations are old. They must have occurred in our common ancestor, likely Homo heidelbergensis, at least 500,000 years ago. This doesn't mean language started then, but it means a critical genetic component for it was in place long before Homo sapiens even existed. So where does that leave us on the question of the very first word? It tells us that there wasn't one. There was no single caveman oog who suddenly grunted fire and changed the world. It was a slow, messy evolutionary process. It probably started with gestures. Our primate cousins are great at using their hands to communicate. It's likely our ancestors were too. Then came sounds linked to those gestures, maybe a specific grunt that went with the gesture for lion. Then came the ability to make more sounds thanks to our changing vocal tract. The grunt for lion could become a more distinct sound. Then, thanks to a bigger brain and the need to cooperate, that sound became detached from the immediate presence of a lion. It became a symbol. You could use the lion word to warn someone about a lion you saw this morning, or to teach a child what a lion is. This was the birth of proto-language. This probably happened, in a serious way, with Homo erectus. For hundreds of thousands of years, this proto-language probably grew. More words. Maybe simple combinations? Lion, danger, go river. Then, with Homo heidelbergensis and the Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, something more happened. The hardware was fully modern. The social complexity was immense. This is likely when syntax grammar started to develop. The ability to not just name things, but to describe the relationships between them. Not just lion and man, but the lion is chasing the man, and crucially, the man is chasing the lion. The order of words creates entirely new meanings. This is the engine of infinite expression. The full flowering of language, with its recursive ability to embed ideas within ideas, I think that he saw the lion that you were talking about yesterday, was probably perfected with us, Homo sapiens. It's what allowed us to create complex cultures, myths, laws, and technologies that have taken over the planet. The first word was not a word, it was a gesture, then a grunt, then a sound, then a symbol. It was a process that took 2 million years. It was built piece by piece by millions of our ancestors living and dying and trying to connect with the minds of others. When we speak today, we are using a biological technology that was forged in the deep past. Every sentence we utter carries the echo of a Homo habilis chipping a stone, a Homo erectus planning a journey, a Neanderthal sharing a story around a fire. The first word is gone forever, lost to the wind, but the journey to that word is written in our bones, in our brains, and in our DNA. And that story is still being told.